Start streaming. Starting.
A substantial fraction of the
And
younger ones are technically speaking
live.
legal immigrants.
See, now we're live. It's nice. It's nice how we could use technology for the good things.
But apparently Taiwanese government is not very harsh against illegal immigrants.
That's very.
Taiwanese government doesn't seem to be very harsh against illegal immigrants.
How many illegal immigrants they have altogether?
Probably the majority of the people who come for a year or two to teach English are technically speaking illegal immigrants.
In Taiwan, if you overstay, you need to pay a fine.
It's not an issue of time. They are coming to do something not allowed by the conditions of the visa. They're illegal immigrants automatically, even if they don't overstay.
Now, if you overstay more than 90 days,
That's
you get
different issue.
you get a black stamp, and they can't come back for 1 year. Yeah.
Okay, so they are harsher about stay than about what they really do. Okay, makes sense.
No, yeah, some just go back in out.
Yeah, I mean, there's people who 12 years. I know someone 12 years. They're going back and
They
forth
just go in and out.
every 3 months. They go out for a day, come back.
They are illegal immigrants. Really?
In a way.
No, they are.
According to the law, yeah, they're
Well, if the law permits you to go back and forth and start recounting it.
but it doesn't permit you to work.
Ah.
Yeah. Only visitor visa. So they are illegal.
Listen, it's not like they're suffering from such an influx of incoming people. It's place is kind of drained with regards to why go rent. It's not as glamorous as our neighbors from west and from east. You know, if you can't compare it to Shanghai, Hong Kong, Singapore, Seoul, Tokyo, all of these cities are filled with foreigners, but Taipei is not really.
You will notice that from by saying my institute. My institute is filled with foreigners.
Foreigners, you have a lot of Japanese there.
Yes.
And that constitutes
Those
foreigners. Yeah. Those are technically foreigners. I was referring to something that's more in my agenda as foreigners, right? I don't know how many Japanese Jews are there in your institute, but
I know a Japanese Jew, but not in my institute.
really? Where? In Japan?
The Japanese Jew I know in the States.
A convert?
I do not know.
Uh-huh. Wow. Okay. Sounds good. Okay, let's talk a little bit about jealousy today. Yeah. Yeah, Marty, nothing you suffer from. So you could skip. You could just indulge in those delicious cupcakes, and I'll let you know when I'm done with the jealousy. So there's this joke about this shtetl. Most of our jokes are like the old shtetl. Things were much more simple in the time when there was one city hall, one mayor, one shul, one club. Everything was. It's always the jokes are always on the simple side. You wanted to say?
At a personal level, have you already started with the streaming?
I started just a minute ago. Why?
Okay, then I got it.
You want your comment off the record? Okay, so keep it for later when I shut. Okay. So in the shtetl, there were two people who was always up to no good, troublemakers. One of them was a person who was always jealous, always envious at everyone, and the other person was a person who was indulged in physical things. Like he's always looking for more pleasures, more desires, more whatever he could benefit from. That's what he wanted. And the people in the shtetl disliked both equally. So the story goes that they both were summoned to the king one day, and the king decided he wants to educate them, right? He wanted to bring them back to good behavior. So he called
the king of the state
now the shtetl becomes, this is micro, macro. Now it becomes bigger, right? So he calls them both after the turn of the head of the community. Okay, let's connect both. So he called them both, and he says, I have a proposal for both of you. One of you would have a request, whatever you want to request, that will be fulfilled. And the other person would get double of what the first one requests. So if one requests money, the other one will get double the money. One requests to be a certain position in the kingdom, the other one will be on a higher position, right? So I'm giving you a few minutes between yourselves, and one of you has to say something, and the other he's going to get what he wants, and the other person will get twice as much. So it was waiting, and none of them was willing to. The guy who was filled with desires was trying to think, what's the best thing I could expect? But how could I spoil myself with a Rolls Royce, knowing that my neighbor is going to have the new model of Rolls Royce, right? So at the end, the envious person said to the king, okay, I'm willing to give you I want you to poke one eye. I want you to take one eye from me. That's what he said, the envious guy, right? So the other one will be completely blind. Jealousy is really a very popular weakness, and all of us somehow suffer from it. Every person has a hard time not trying to look at other people and thinking, oh, maybe I could get the same as they are, or maybe more than them, maybe I should deserve more, and so on and so forth. Sometimes we're jealous at the other person's work status, sometimes their financial status, sometimes their family life, where everything always from the outside looks very pink and beautiful and flowery, but as we all know, it's not always the same. And we were talking a few weeks ago about Moses being humble. Were you here when we were talking about humility? So Moses, you were here, right?
Last week,
not the week before. So we were talking about Moses being humble, and as humble as you can get, right? And we were trying to say, how could he be so humble while he had so many achievements and he had so many advantages over other people, but he changed things in his mind. He looked at things in a different way, which gave him important updates are pending. Isn't it lovely? Pick a time. Later. 8:05. Let's do 9:05. I'll be done by now.
On my laptop,
Yeah?
that update took about 6 hours.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
They're dangerous also.
Okay. So I'll do it 10:05 and I'll go to bed.
Usually set them to midnight or
And I'll go to bed afterwards. Okay. Okay. I thought you were going to say your laptop never asked you. My laptop is educated. He asked me.
It issues these little warnings that says this might take a while. Usually it'll say take a moment or something, but this might take a while. That was a pretty stark message from.
Also, when you start it after the update, it might.
It also takes a while. Okay. Luckily, it asked. The prompt was very. Thank you, Microsoft, for giving me a prompt. I've had that before, where you work on something, you ignore some warnings, and then that's it, gone.
Oh,
Then you're into the cycle of rebooting,
you're
and
only allowed so much accommodation.
anyway, so Moses, as we said, was very humble, and the Medrash is telling us something very interesting. It's not a well-known thing, but the Medrash is telling us about an interesting dialogue Moses had with Joshua, with Yoshua. Yoshua was chosen to be the leader of the people after Moses' passing. He is going to be the person that will bring them into the Holy Land, into the Promised Land, while Moses had to stay in the desert and die there because he was promised that he's not going. Hold on, I'll close the door.
Would you repeat that last about Moses remaining in the desert and died there for what reason? There was a decree on him that he won't enter the land of Israel. There's several opinions on why was the decree. The one that's described in the scripture is because the sin with the rock. When God told Moses to take water out of the rock, and he said to speak to the rock.
but Moses hit the rock. Moses hitting the rock, God got upset at him and said, you hit the rock, you'll stay in the desert. It's kind of weird. We'll get there, by the way. It's in a few weeks, and there's a few more explanations of why he had to stay in the desert. One of the explanations was that if had Moses entered the land of Israel, the ultimate redemption would arrive. And if Moses, having all the benefits and the advantages of Moses in the Holy Land, that would bring about a situation that, the ultimate redemption would be here, and it wasn't the time yet. There's a few other reasons. In any event, Moses had to let go, and not only did he let go, he appointed Joshua. Remember, we said that God told him to put one hand on him, and he put two hands on him. He gave him an abundance of blessings. He gave him all the best wishes that he'll be successful to manage these guys. They're not easy to work with, those Jews, They're always complaining, always kvetching. There's always, this guy's not happy, that guy's not. So, this is talking when Moses already gave the scepter, so to speak, to Joshua. And a cloud came down on Joshua. And God spoke to him. God said something to Joshua. That was very weird because Moses was not a part of the conversation. Usually when communicating with God, Moses was the one on top of that. But this is already the post-Moses time. And the cloud descending, saying something to Joshua, and ascending back. Moses approached Joshua and said, tell me, what did you hear? What did God tell you? What did you hear? What was the heavenly message? And look at Joshua's response. The pillar of smoke faded away. Moses approached Joshua asking, what did God tell you? Answered Joshua, when you used to talk to him, meaning God, did I ever ask you what he said? Screams Moses, I would rather have 100 death punishments and not one jealousy. Joshua telling Moses, I've never asked you when God spoke to you. I've never come after you to tell you. Whatever you had to deliver, you delivered. Whatever you had to tell me, you told me. Whatever you needed to convey to the people was conveyed. I never came to be bothered with your own business of God's things, right? So, why are you asking me? But Moses, he didn't perceive it this way. He was showing interest. He wasn't trying to get under Joshua to get something that wasn't supposed to be given to him. He just asked him, what was said to you? And look at that. Joshua expresses jealousy. Moses said, I would like to die 100 times and not have the level of jealousy, not have the attribute of jealousy. It was so far from him, jealousy, that he said, I'd like to die 100 times and not have that. So because jealousy takes a person out of their mind, we could see that this escorted us from the very beginning. The first sins that we encounter in the Torah all have to do with jealousy. When God created the world, the sun and the moon were equal. They had the same size. They were the same size. Do you know that, Marty? The sun and the moon were equal. Ruben, a little bit of prehistory astrophysics. The sun and the moon were equal in the size, and it was supposed to be that the sun is the luminary for the day, and the moon is the luminary for the night. Don't ask me how exactly would the night be dark if it was the same luminary. In any event, the sun and the moon were the same size. And then the moon complained to God and said to God, you can't have two kings with one throne. It doesn't go like that. You need to have a king. So God saying to the moon, okay, if you're saying you can't have two kings, I'll make the sun a king, and you will be the servant, right? So, because of jealousy, it sounds like a fairy tale. I understand, Marty, but it is what happened. The second item we have, everybody knows Cain and Abel, right? Cain was upset with his brother. He was jealous that God took the offering of the brother, so he went and killed him. The snake, right? The snake and Adam. The snake was jealous. He was envy of Adam HaRishon for having Chava, for having Eve. She was beautiful. She was one of the most beautiful women that ever existed. And the snake wanted her, in a way. Right? Again, it's a little snake, man, which was pre what you know. So we see jealousy as being a common denominator, a very active factor in a lot of the troubles that took place in the very beginning of the world. This is what Nachmanides brings on Cain. It says, and it annoyed Cain exceedingly, and his countenance fell. He was embarrassed by his brother and envied him greatly, so he killed him. That's a very extreme reaction to jealousy, but it's not far-fetched. I mean, you could read about it even in contemporary newspaper. You could see somebody was envy, right?
Every week.
Every week, right? I was saying it's not far-fetched. You're saying it's actually very real. I didn't know about every week, but I've heard of one or two instances where jealousy was really what made a person go and do something that extreme. So here we see it was in the very beginning. And Kana Kemach says, all hatred has remedy except hatred that comes from jealousy. All hatred has remedy. You hear that? Even anti-Semitism, even racism, even fascism, all the hatred has remedy. One hatred that doesn't have remedy, there's no cure to it, is the jealousy. Jealousy, there's no way around it. And of course, we know what it says in Pirkei Avot, I think it's of our Father in chapter 4, which we're going to read this Shabbos. Rabbi Lazar Kapal would say, envy, lust, and honor drive a man from the world. If somebody has too much envy, lust, and honor, a pursuit for honor, by the way, that's with our cousins in Israel, the Arabs. For them, honor is everything. It's all about honor, right? They could kill for honor. They could, this is a disgrace for our family. Somebody does something that's immorally not that right, and they would just get rid of them, kill them, and they say that's a disgrace for our family. Kvoda mishpacha, right? They have that. Unfortunately, the terminology is too common. So envy is driving a man out of the world, because envy is endless. Jealousy is endless. It doesn't end anywhere. You see, when somebody is possessed with jealousy, when someone is so into being envious at someone, it doesn't have a stop. There's no way I can match, right? Even if I'll match, I'll get to the same status. It will always look a little different on the other side, right? It will always be a little more shiny, a little more green, a little nicer. So it's a circle that doesn't end, because jealousy doesn't have an end. There's no achievement that could say, oh, I'm no longer jealous. I have nothing to add. I rest my case. With jealousy, it doesn't happen. Right? If somebody is jealous at someone who's making more money, so they would like to make as more money as the other person, but then the other person might get to another level, right? It's a moving target. The target, you try there again, then the target moves again. So there's no way around it. So what is the root of everything? So the root of jealousy is the lack of self-esteem. You see, it's like a bucket, right? Where you're trying to fill the bucket, and the bucket is with a hole. So it's much more, the more you put in it, it doesn't help, right? It always spills from the other side, always comes out of the hole. So it doesn't matter, right? Instead of understanding how much I'm worth and how I am special and how I'm unique, a person is always busy with what the other person has to offer. And then it's an endless circle. It's filling the bucket. Okay, so you get jealousy because you want to do more. So you do more, but then what? But there's a hole in the bucket because the self-esteem is lacking. Because the person doesn't truly evaluate himself, doesn't truly know what they're worth in their eyes, not only other people's eyes, in their eyes. And the question we're trying to cope with today is how to overcome that. How could a person get self-esteem and really be content and be happy with their lot and be happy with what they have? So, apparently, the question is a little more complex than what we say. Because sometimes jealousy is a positive thing. There could be positive jealousy. Moses and Aaron, they were first cousins of Korach. This week's portion we speak about Korach. Korach was a rebel, a person who rebelled against Moshe Rabbeinu, a person who came and convinced everyone that Moses was inventing all kinds of things and that he appointed himself to be the leader. And it so happened that his brother becomes the high priest And it so happened that his nephew becomes in charge of the tabernacle, and it's all like, nepotism. Everything has to do with the family. Korach said, I'm a cousin too. I should also deserve. So on one hand, he was a fighter for democracy and freedom, saying, oh, this is a corrupt government. But on the other hand, like every other person who tries to fight a corrupt government because they're corrupt themselves, he wanted all the dignities, all the honors to come to him. That was Korach. Korach was very rich, by the way. We have, until today, the term Ashir ka Korach, as rich as Korach. He was also very smart, very wise, but he was also very jealous. And because of his jealousy, he went and acted things that are completely out of order. And he tried to challenge Moses, saying Moses took people and appointed them on his own, without consulting God. And then what happened is that he convinced other people. He said, I'm not fighting for me, I'm fighting for everyone else. Who is this Moses that would come and say and argue and appoint people? Who is he? We need democracy, we need everybody. What does he say? He says, everybody's holy. Who do you think you are? Or they say in America, who the hell do you think you are? They say that a lot, unfortunately. Right? So, Korach came out and rebelled against Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moses, of course, was not hurt personally, but was hurt that such a thing happened. So he told Korach very well, if you think I made up this whole thing, why don't we go to God? And why don't we ask God? And why don't we ask God to prove who is the chosen one and who is someone who's not chosen, right? And he said they wanted to inherit the role of the high priest. There was one high priest, and Korach convinced 250 people to be high priests. He wanted 250 high priests. You see, we could barely manage one. They wanted 250. So Moses said, you bring incense. And whoever brings incense, if God wants his offering, he would take it. And if not, there could be serious implications for that. And indeed, what happened, the story was that the earth opened its mouth. There was a hole in the ground, and the earth turned like a big slide, and Korach and all of his gatherings, all of his friends and all of his community, his little party, they all got swollen. Yeah, swallowed. Swollen is like when you have swallowed in the ground, right? But coming back to where we were with regards to jealousy, here's what Maimonides says. I'm sorry. This is about how the timing of why Korach came now with this challenge against Moshe Rabbeinu. So Maimonides brings a very interesting explanation of why now, right? Moses was the leader for all these years. Why now? The Jewish people, while being in the desert, had no real harm done to them. Even after committing the horrible sin of the golden calf, the casualties were only few, and the people were saved through the prayer of Moses. This is why they loved Moses greatly. Had Korach rebelled Moses during that time, he would probably be stoned to death by the masses. This is why Korach waited all these years. It was only after the sin of the spies, when Moses did not pray for them, and the decree which followed that this whole generation will die in the desert and will not marry to enter the promised land. Then the people were depressed and bitter, so Korach found an opportunity to rebel, thinking the people would listen to him. So Korach, it's all about the timing, right? Everybody loved Moses. He protected them. He helped them. He tear open the water for them, and he brought the bread from the heavens. And even when they did wrong, he protected them. The spies, Moses tried to protect everyone else, but the spies he couldn't protect. This was beyond his reach. So they died, and of course God, like we studied last week, right? God got really upset. The people didn't want to enter the land of Israel. God said, one day a year, just like you visited the land for 40 days, it's going to be 40 years in the desert. Everybody were upset. Everybody were depressed. Everyone was, getting the decree. And that's when Korach came out with his little scheme of going against Moshe Rabbeinu. And here's what Moses answers. He doesn't argue with them. He said, you want to be priests? Let's see what he says. Rashi says like this. He says, do this, take for yourself censors. Why did he see fit to speak them thus? He said to them, among the nations there are various forms of worship and many priests. and they do not all gather in one temple. We, however, Jewish people, have only one God, one ark, one Torah, one altar, and one high priest. But you 250 men are all seeking the Keunah Gdolah, the priesthood. I too would prefer that. Moses is telling them, you know what? I wouldn't mind being the high priest as well. But that mission, that post is taken. There's someone who's already a high priest. I wouldn't mind being a high priest. In other words, being envy at that post of serving God is not the end of the world. If you see someone manning a post of a spiritual importance, someone who represents the people in front of God, someone who serves God in the temple, and you say to yourself, I'd like to be that too, there's nothing bad with that. But together with the acknowledgement that you understand you can't change the order of how things are. We have one God, one temple, one altar, and one high priest. 250 is just a non-starter. It's not going to work. And later, this answer of Moses turns to be a whole method, a whole system in our Talmud of positive jealousy. Look at what the Talmud says with regards to teachers. You were talking earlier about English teachers. These are Talmud teachers. Somebody who opens a business teaching Talmud. Could you open a business next to him doing the same thing? Let's look at what the Talmud says. In Baba Batra, Rav Yosef said in Rav Huna, who said that the resident of an alleyway can prevent another from setting up additional meal. Right? Somebody has a business, a meal, and you could say to another person, you can't open a meal here. You can't open a German bakery here because I have a German bakery or a bakery, whatever it is. You can't do that. You're taking away all my livelihood, right? So you could concede with regards to those who teach children that one cannot prevent him from working. As the master said, Ezra instituted an ordinance for the Jewish people requiring that they establish one teacher alongside another teacher to raise the standard of teaching. The Gemara challenges, and let us be concerned lest the teachers will thereby come to be negligent. Rav Yosef said to the sage who raised this objection, jealousy among teacher increases wisdom. He says to him, and that's one of the ideas of an open market, a free market, is competition, that the consumers are the ones who enjoy it, right? What happens with competition, right? When you have only one option, when you have only one company or one service provider, then you're jammed, right? They can do whatever they want. But when you have competition, in Israel a few years ago, people used to pay a fortune on their cell phone bill. You used to call by the way, I just want you to know I had a little bit of work with one of the cellular operators in their technical side when I lived in Israel. Calling between people, members of the same service provider are at zero cost to the provider. Okay, so calling within the same company, the same operator, is 0.0 cost to the provider. They have the infrastructure, they have the network, they have everything. It is only they have to start paying royalties when you call another company, another provider, so for them to connect the service to their customer, then you have to pay a fee. But so nowadays it's mostly practiced. Now people know within the network it's usually for free. But back in the day, I'm talking 10 years ago in Israel, and of course prior to that, I'm not that old, but people who had cell phones 20 years ago, they used to rip you off like hell, right? And you couldn't do anything because you only had, or there were 2 companies or 3, but they all joined forces. But when there's competition, so you have a choice. If I'm not happy with your service, I'll go to get somewhere else. And people want to keep the customers, so they lower the price, they get more promotions, offers. This is something that looks normal to us. It's an open market, but it's not always been like that. So with regards to somebody getting a livelihood from a certain type of business, the Gemara says you can't have somebody opening the same type of shop across the street for them or in the same street as them. You're taking away their livelihood. What happens with teachers? No, on teachers you could actually do that because the teacher would say, I'd like the kids to come to my school, to my class, to be in my grade. I should be a better teacher. So when I should be a better teacher, this is a win-win situation. Now, if I'm going to sell my German pastries lower than you in order to lure the customers, I might be losing money. You might be losing money. maybe the customers are happy, but no, at the end of the day, somebody's not happy. But with the teachers, when you do your job better, you become more content, and the final product is also better because the kids are learning better. So jealousy among teacher increases wisdom. You say it in Hebrew, קנאת סופרים תרבה חוכמה. אתה מכיר את הביטוי הזה? קנאת סופרים תרבה חוכמה. So not only, we said earlier several really serious words about jealousy. You know, it's so bad, it's so negative, it's endless. Everything, all hatred has remedy besides hatred of jealousy. But now we see jealousy is also a trigger for improvement. When someone is jealous of the other person's achievement, that could encourage them to invest more, to do more, and to get to the same achievements or even to surpass those. So we find that jealousy also so that's very confusing, right? On one hand, we said those terrible things about jealousy, and on the other hand, we say jealousy could be a mechanism for self-improvement. How could one differentiate between the two, between a positive one and a negative one, and how could you really overcome what we said earlier, the negative one? How could you really take it away from your agenda and be able to move on? So, in order to answer that question, we'll look a little bit about that symbol. I don't know in Taiwan if that's so common, but in many countries, is it, Marty? Is it also?
I think it's used here.
It's used here as well. Okay, so the medical serpent symbol, right? The serpent that's on a stick, on a pole, and this is something to do with medicine. Why is it so? So as we know, everything has a source in Torah. Torah tells us a story about the snakes that came and bit the people. And then Moses turning to God and saying what to do. And God saying, take one of the serpents, put it up high. Whoever got bitten by the snake has to raise his eyes to the heavens, seeing that snake that's on a pole, that's suspended higher than the person's look. They have to raise their hand. And when they raise their head and they raise their eyes, they remind themselves of the presence of God, and then they get cured. That was the instruction of God, right? The Lord said to Moses, make yourself a serpent and put it on a pole, and let whoever is bitten look at it and live. So, of course, we have a very special, a very important question, very famous one. Why, that's what Dr. Rebbe asked, why would it need to be a serpent? And why looking up to it? When a person experiences harsh times, they should think that indeed everything comes from the Almighty, who is good in essence. This explains the snake and the looking up, meaning elevating the snake to its source, which is all good, and no bad descends from above. So in fact, one can ask, why do we need a serpent, right? All they needed is look up. Well, if all they needed to look up, then they could have put some writings from the Torah on a high pole, and everybody would look at it. No, what the Alter Rebbe explains is that, in fact, everything comes from God, and God is the ultimate good. So everything that comes from Him is good. But how could a snake biting me is a good thing? How could I say that it's a good thing? So, in fact, you can understand that the source of the snake, or where the snake comes from, or where this whole concept comes from, is in order to awaken me, in order for me to remember who I am. Sometimes the only way to shake me is to give me a little, like we say in Yiddish, stech. Stech, I think a little stab, not a big one, but not stab, poke, right? You poke someone, right? That's how you say it. You poke someone, yeah? Sometimes you poke someone, and that gives you, right? So if we use the same foundation, looking at jealousy, we should say, jealousy was also created by God. What is the benefit of it? So there's a story with the Rebbe Rashab and his brother. This was the fifth Rebbe of Chabad, and his brother. And the Rebbe Rashab was younger than his brother, but he was taller. So the older brother was shorter, didn't like that much, right? He didn't like that his younger brother is actually taller than him. So they used to play together, and the older brother came up with the idea. He said, we'll pray, some exchange. He took there was a little hole in the ground, and he said to his younger brother, who was taller than him, why don't you stand here, just right here, and then they could see each other in the same height, and then he was happy. And the mother came out, and she said to him, if you want to be as high as your brother or higher than your brother, so climb on the stone. Don't put your brother in a pit. That's not the way to do things. Okay, he found a nice solution where he could stay like this, and his younger brother, which was taller than him, could be at the same height or maybe even shorter than him. And his mother came out and said, you want to get taller than someone else, climb on a chair or climb on a stone. Don't put that other person down. Don't wait until that person goes down, or don't put you will put him either in your mind or in practical sense down. That's not the way to do things. If you want to reach higher, then make an effort. So jealousy could be taken to both ways. It could be as making myself higher, which is a positive jealousy. And then the negative jealousy is lowering the other. And that's something we need to fight with. Now, looking at where we were, with the three stories we brought earlier, with the moon, with Cain, and with Korach, which is in our weekly portion, we could see the difference between what needs to be done, and this is the negative jealousy, of course. So the moon, instead of trying to make himself higher, wanted the sun smaller. Cain, instead of taking care of his offerings and bettering it, killed his own brother. Yeah, great solution to the problem. His offerings were better. I'll just kill him, and then this is going to be only my offerings. That's great, isn't it? And Korach, instead of elevating himself, wanted Moses and Aaron out of their posts. So Korach had the same problem, that the same feature, the same issue that we had with the others. Korach's jealousy was negative. And he wanted Moses and Aaron out of their posts, instead of looking at how could I elevate myself, how could I get... So jealousy in essence is not a negative thing. Jealousy actually arouses me to look at others and say, this person is higher than me. Let me try and get there. Let me try and make another effort. Let me see if I'm capable of doing more than I'm doing now. And maybe I'll get to the same level, or maybe I even be higher than that person. But that's all about me. Where the negative jealousy is about the other. I'm not the subject. He's the subject. He's the problem. He's the issue. He doesn't supposed to be there. He's all corrupt. He's all bad. They got it all controlled by force. They never got elected by democracy. They have so you could see the difference between what am I focusing on? Am I focusing about myself? That's good. There's ways to do it, of course, but that's good. The concept itself is a positive thing, to focus on myself, to see how I can self-improvement. But once the focus moves on the other, then you could explain to yourself and you could realize as well that you lost it. That this is not jealousy that will bring you somewhere. This will only corrupt you, and this will only be, like we said, an endless circle that has no beginning and no end. This is what Rashi says about positive jealousy. And Rachel saw that she had not borne any children to Jacob. And Rachel envied her sister. And she said to Jacob, give me children, and if not, I'm dead. Rashi. And Rachel envied her sister. She envied her good deeds. She said, if she had not been more righteous than I, she would not have merited children. So what is this envious? Apparently you'd say, oh, she's jealous because her sister's got kids. She doesn't have kids. That sounds like a negative jealousy. But Rashi explains, no. She realized, why does her sister have kids? Because her sister is righteous. Because she does things right. Because she has a better connection with God, so to speak. So, if it wasn't the case, she wouldn't have children. So that means that's possible. That means I could be better. I could do better. And guess what? She ended up having 2 children. Though her sister Leah had 6 children, but Rachel still had 2 children, right? One of them is Joseph, and the other is Benjamin, of course. Both of them were very famous and very successful. So this is a positive jealousy. Let's look at something a little more contemporary. Hayom Yom, 24 Cheshvan. In material matters, one should always look at he whose situation is lower than one's own, and thank the good God for his kindness to him. In spiritual matters, one should always look at he who is higher than oneself, and plead with God to grant him the intelligence to learn from the other, and the ability and strength to rise higher. So, the other person's car, iPhone, job, position, all these things, you don't look at someone who's higher than you, you look at someone who's lower than you. And you say, thank God for having a roof on top of my head. Thank God for having dinner. Thank God for allowing myself things that other people might not allow themselves. That's the spirit. But when it comes to spiritual things, you shouldn't be content. You shouldn't be satisfied with the way you are. And we have that problem sometimes where we're satisfied. Somebody says, I come to class once a week. That's all my Judaism. That's not you, heavens forbid. I'm just saying someone else. But that's good to be happy, but it's not good to be satisfied. Because when you're satisfied, you don't do more. But when you look at other people, you say, I'd like to be like that person spiritually. I'd like to be as involved as the other person. That triggers me to do something better, to do higher, to make another effort, and basically to achieve it and to match the other person, or sometimes even to get higher than that. So, there's also a very interesting discussion in Jewish law of whether or not you should publicize the people who do mitzvot, who do good deeds. Say a family from Brazil goes to Israel and decides to donate $5 million to synagogues, hospitals, whatever. You know, most hospitals in Israel, maybe also elsewhere, but I know in Israel most hospitals have names on the buildings. This is, right? The hospital I was born in Israel, Wolfson, it's called Wolfson Hospital because the Wolfson family donated a lot of money for this place. And, you know, there's also the Weizmann Institute. The Weizmann Institute was kind of honorary, right? Weizmann didn't give money. Weizmann was a biochemist, was the first president of Israel, very, very, very intelligent person. So I think the Weizmann Institute is not a good example. But there's a lot of institutes, a lot of yeshivas, a lot of schools, a lot of universities that have buildings and faculties, and it's all named after people who were generous enough to give. And the question is this positive or not? So we have several opinions. One opinion, the Shulchan Aruch appears, a person should not boast about the charity they give. If they do, they are punished for it. So Shulchan Aruch, it's kind of explicit. A person should not have that. That's against. But together with that, there's an argument for in Rashba. The Rashba brings the Torah tends to publicize and glorify those who do mitzvot. This is the source of the fact they used to write on the walls the names of those who dedicate from their fortune, for them to have a good memory as well as to open the door for others to do the same. What happens is, because of that element of jealousy people have, so you got rich people saying, oh, this wealthy guy, you know, donated that much to this institution. I'd like to donate as much as they, or maybe even more than they, right? So we got the beneficiaries are the institutions, the charities, the poor people, the organizations who benefit from charity actually enjoy this competition because people are competing on who's going to do better and who's going to do more with regards to these things. And this is about a requirement where someone wants to publicize their name. But the Lubavitcher Rebbe said that even if they're not the ones who initiate, we have to be the ones who initiate. In other words, we need to go around, unless told explicitly by the donor that this is a donation incognito, right? This is a donation that's not to be publicized. Unless that is said, when a person does something good, then we need to be the ones telling everybody about that good deed that the person did, because that would motivate others to do the same. That would bring other people to the same status, right? So not only we should not deny when somebody wants to publicize, but we should also initiate in order to arouse positive jealousy. Again, positive jealousy is not about the other person. Positive jealousy is about me. Negative jealousy is all about the other person. I'm not assiding. It's all him. It's his fault. His this, his that. You know, that's how you could recognize. Positive is about me. Oh, this person did something so well. I could do that too. Or I could do half of that. I could do some of that. I could reach that perhaps. So again, we see that jealousy has two sides. And we see that we're still left with the question of how exactly could I prevent myself, on one hand, encourage myself to be envious at successful people in order to reach higher, but not cross the border and get to a jealousy that is negative and is counterproductive. So there's a story, I told that story to you, I guess at least once I remember. But anyway, the story with the Mendel Futterfass. The Mendel Futterfass was a Hasid who was sent to jail in Russia. This is talking in the years with the communist regime. Being in prison in Russia you didn't have to do much for it. You didn't have to do at all for it for some people. Of course, Russia is known, the communists are known to have zero tolerance to religion, and indeed they managed to deprive most of the religions in Russia. The only religion that somewhat survived is Judaism, and that is because of a group of people who were dedicated, who were willing to give their life for that reason. This is the Chabad group in Russia. It started in Russia. Those people who would go and teach children when it wasn't allowed. They would go and circumcise babies. They would go and officiate weddings. They would go and build ritual baths, and all these things that were not allowed by the government. And sometimes the people were caught. Either they were shot or they were sent to Siberia. And within days, someone would man the post of the person who's gone. So we're talking about stubbornness, Jewish stubbornness in its best. And indeed, what happened, the communist regime, it fell apart, but Judaism thrived and is thriving in former Soviet Union. If enough of a visit, did you visit Moscow in your trips? You should go. I haven't visited. I have so many invitations of people that always invite me. You've been?
I've seen the synagogue from the outside.
Well, you should go in. Outside is nothing. You should go in. There's one synagogue that was always there. It's called Marina Roscha, but it's not. Now there's not only a synagogue. They have a wedding hall, and they have school for girls, school for boys, yeshiva, seminary. They have a two kosher restaurant, kosher store. They built a kosher hotel. Donuts, there's a whole, and it's full. There's a lot of people. They didn't build just for nothing. There's a lot of people there. So obviously, with the result, the time aspect, yeah, Judaism was successful and was victorious over the communism. So during the years, Mendel Futerfas was caught for teaching Judaism or whatever he did, and they sent him to forced labor. They sent him to labor camp. They sent him to exile, and he was also about to be executed. He was also on the death row, and he was saved somehow. And when he was saved, and he moved to the United States, to Israel. Eventually, he was in England, and he used to tell stories from prison. You don't get a lot of rabbis in prison, not at least in those times. He used to tell stories. So they put him in prison, and he wasn't a negative person. He was a very positive person and a very happy individual. And he made friends with a lot of the prisoners who weren't his cup of tea. But when you're locked in a cell with these people, you better make friends with them. That's right. So they used to play cards. He told a story that they used to play cards. The work they used to end at 5 o'clock in the evening. And then the prisoners used to go to their cells. And it was too early to sleep, 5 o'clock in the evening. So the prisoners would play cards. The problem is that cards were not allowed in prison. And if they were caught, it would be confiscated by the prison officer, by the warden. And one time, the prisoners were sitting and playing cards and were laughing with each other. And all of a sudden, the officer burst into the door and he says, "You've been playing cards, you've been playing cards. Where are the cards? Get me the cards right now." So they said, "We don't know what you're talking about. There's no cards. We're just telling jokes. We're just talking to you." "No, this can't be." Everybody line up. He lined up everyone. And he looked at their pockets and he looked everywhere. He opened the beds. He flipped everything. I don't know what beds they had. It wasn't nothing to write home about. But enough of a place to hide. He was looking everywhere. He couldn't find the cards. He's all upset and he walks away. He walks away. 5 minutes later, they're playing cards again. Playing cards and again knocking at the door, bursting into the door. "Where are the cards? Where are the cards?" Can't find the cards. Everybody line up. You won't go out of the cell. You won't go on recess. Anyways, everybody lines up. Nothing. You can't find the cards. So a man, seeing that several times unveiled in front of his eyes, was actually very puzzled. He said he was inside. He saw the cards. He saw them. He wasn't playing with them, but he saw the cards. So he said to them, where do you hide the cards? How do you manage to pull it through every time?" So initially they didn't want to tell him. Maybe he was an informer. You don't know who's he working for. But when he became friends with them, eventually they told him that one of the people in their cell was one of Moscow's best pickpocket experts. And he said that as soon as the guard walks in, our friend here by the door puts the cards in the guard's pocket, in the officer's pocket. So he's looking everywhere, and just when he's about to leave, this guy with very quick hands, able to draw back the pack of cards from the guard's pocket, from the officer's pocket, and everybody is playing. So Ahmed telling that story, what he learned from it, you relate the story, you learn from it that a person is looking for blemishes, and he's looking for issues, and he's looking for problems everywhere else but in himself. And at the end of the day, it's all about me. At the end of the day, it starts with me and it ends with me. So looking everywhere, trying to think, trying to blame, trying to accuse, trying to say yes and no, and I think and I don't know. At the end of the day, right? So the answer to what we asked for earlier, we said about self-esteem. We said jealousy is lack of self-esteem. So how do we encourage self-esteem? How do we build self-esteem? The answer actually lies within ourselves. It lies in this room and it lies everywhere else. And if we look to ourselves, we see that a very interesting phenomenon. There are not two people that are identical. There are not two people in the world that are identical. Neither in their looks, how much more so in their character traits, in their qualities, in their talents, in their fields of interest, in their intelligence, right? There's not two people in the world that are not the same. And why is it so? Why is it so? God, you think of God as creating the world, right? Look at this. We're in a country, they make a lot of things here, right? Semiconductor industry. They make all of Apple iPhones. What would God trigger? Why wouldn't he do the November 1983 series, right? Making everybody who was born November 1983 the same, right? Would it be so easy for God, right? It's mass production. Mass production. God says, this month, this year, this is my series, right? Apple does all their phones the same, right? And Samsung does the same. Everybody does. You make it. The tables are done the same. The chairs are. What would God bother? Why would he bother changing? Why would he want, right? It wouldn't just the line. What year were you born? 1990. 1990. What month?
June.
So June 1990. Oh, your birthday is coming. Last week?
Next week.
Next week. Mazal tov. Wow. So would you imagine, June 1990, everybody looks like you, thinks like you, speak like you, or have the same field of interest. Wouldn't it be interesting, right? All the iPhones are, the iPhone 7 is all the same, right? We get iPhone 8. I didn't say all the people to be the same, but he could have had, mass production. That shouldn't be an issue for him, right? But God puts an effort. Every person is different. Every person has something that someone else doesn't have. Why is it so? And the reason for that is, it's like one big puzzle. And each person is a unique piece at that puzzle. The world was created by God, was crafted by God. But the world was not done in a way where everybody fits every place. It doesn't work like that. Everybody likes frames. Put some things in frames. Put things in a frame, and then you'll be happy with it. But it doesn't work. Some things are not square. Right, Ruben? Some things are round, some rectangle. Some are even what is it called? Hexagons, right? It doesn't fit in squares. It doesn't work like that. We are all unique. And we all have something that is unique to us that other people don't have. So, we're talking about self-esteem. You see other people, they're more successful than you. They seem happier than you. They seem like they've achieved more than you. Of course it arouses jealousy. Of course you think, oh, I would love that. I would want that. But thinking to yourself, that person is different than me. I'm different than them. I'm special in my own way. I have character traits and talents. I have intelligence. I have abilities that no one else has in this world. How do I know that? Because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here. If God sent my soul to this world, it's because there's a mission. There's something that's waiting for me and just for me. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here. That's the only way I can explain it. God putting us in this world, equipping us, each one, in a different way, because we all have different challenges, and we all have different missions. We all have different things to achieve in life. We can never compare. There's no such thing, June 1990. There's no line. There is no, right? I think there isn't, as much as I know. I don't know nowadays with all this cloning business. I don't know about that. Reuben, we need to get Robert if you're listening to us online. So you need to give us a little.
We know the answer to that one because natural cloning sometimes happens. Identical twins are identical twins.
Yes.
They're the same people.
Exactly. They might look the same, right? And
still, even in the looks.
Yeah.
One, for example, I know identical twins at birth, but I know them as adults. They already look different. They created their body different ways in their lives.
Right? So, as we said, the foundation of self-esteem is the acknowledgement that I'm special. And you're special. And you're special. Everyone is special. And the fact that I acknowledge that you're special and I'm special in my own special way of being special, I make myself realize that I'm worth something in God's eyes. I'm worth so much so that He gave me the soul back this morning, and hopefully He's going to give me my soul back the next morning because I have a mission to fulfill which I have not fulfilled yet, and I have challenges to go through, and I need to prove myself and prove Him that I'm capable of doing more than what I'm doing now. So all I have to do is think, how can I maximize my potential? How can I be that piece in the puzzle? I will never be somebody else's piece. I'll be the piece that fits right in the spot that it needs to fit. That's how God crafted me. That's what I need to be. I don't need to be someone else. I need to be myself. That's what the Rebbe says in Sichot Kodesh. This is 1981. God had created the world in such a way that their faces differ as well as their ideas differ. There could not be two people in the world who are completely identical, but rather a bit similar. The reason for that is, since every person and every creature has a goal that no one else has, thus the world needs all of us to complete its goal. So, looking at the world in such a way takes away the concept of negative jealousy, takes away the lack of self-esteem. There's no longer a hole in the bucket. You could fill the bucket and you could be happy with the content. You don't need to be jealous of other people because you are different than other people. The fact that you are different from them means that you have a different mission and a different role to complete. And therefore, you're equipped with different forces and different strength. And therefore, your challenges are slightly different than others. Although it looks the same, it might feel the same, but it's not the same. And that's the explanation the Torah tells us about Korach. Oh, it says another thing I wanted to tell you about with Korach. Moses was telling Korach, let's wait till tomorrow morning. Right? Korach came out with all these arguments. Why did you do that? And why you're the leader? And your brother is the high priest? And your cousin is this? And your nephew is that? So Moses says, hold it. Maybe you've been, a little bit Taiwan-y. I don't know what you had. Let's wait for tomorrow morning. Let's wait tomorrow. Every time. Always the best strategy, by the way. It's like waiting for the next morning. Sometimes writing an email, right? Somebody sends you a message or an email that you get really pissed by. Really annoying. Wait another day. Wait till tomorrow morning. Sleep on it. Lishana zelayla. You know that term, right? We say in Hebrew. Sleep on it. Wait. So tomorrow morning you look at things a little more clear. Maybe what the text said that's not exactly what you thought it said. Maybe the intention wasn't as bad as you thought it is. Maybe you find a different strategy, avoiding confrontation but still conveying your message. Wait. So he says to Korach, let's wait for tomorrow morning. He says, Boker ve'yoda Hashem et asher lo. In the morning, God will tell us who is the one who was right. So, this is what the verse says. Moses spoke to Korach and to all of his company, saying, in the morning the Lord will make known who is his and who is holy, and who will draw them near to him, and the one he chooses, he will draw near to him. That's what Moses says. So, according to the common explanation, just wait for tomorrow morning. Just wait for tomorrow morning. But the Midrash brings a different explanation. He says like this. The Midrashic interpretation of Boker, morning, rather than Machar, tomorrow. He didn't say tomorrow. He didn't say tomorrow. He says morning. Moses said to him, to Korach, the Holy One, blessed be He, assigned boundaries in this world. Are you able to transform morning into evening? That is how possible it is for you to undo this. As it says, it was evening and it was morning, and he separated, Vayavdel. Similarly, Aaron was set apart, Vayibadel, to sanctify him. What do you want? You want the post of Aaron? You want to be the high priest? Well, you can't do that. God designated that position to Aaron. And Aaron was crafted by God in this specific way in order to be appropriate, to be completely fit to what he needs to do. But you're different. You have a different mission. So he says to him, morning. He says, Korach, you can't make morning into evening. It's not going to help you anything. God separated morning and evening. God separated the same way, like you understand you can't turn morning into evening. The same way you can't turn Aaron to be not the priest and for you to be the priest. So, this is what the Rebbe explained. Just like there are boundaries in times of the day and night, and when each fulfills its mission together, one day is formed. So too, in regards to the role of each individual in the world, the only way the world could get to completion is by each of us fulfilling our own personal mission, not thinking of how can I achieve that post and that role of another person. And sometimes, now this is the ideal situation. The ideal situation is for each of us to acknowledge what we're worth and what are our energies and what is our mission in life. But sometimes it's not ideal. People try all kinds of different things. People go into different religions and different cults. People try different diets and different what is it called, courses of spirituality. And people try all kinds of patents, and they get to see newspaper ads, and they call the guy, and they get to people reading coffee and tarot cards, and we make a lot of mistakes along the way, trying to find who we really are. We end up usually finding, but sometimes it's a long and challenging journey. But really, if we look into ourselves and we think to ourselves, how can we do it better? Then we see that really we don't need to look anywhere else. The cards are just right here in my pocket. It's in no one else's pocket. The cards I need to play the game of the world, to play the game of life, are actually in my pocket. And you know what? No one else could even have my cards. They have their cards. They could play their mission, their life, their gameplay. My game, my role, my cards. I was equipped by God in the cards. So a person should think of it and contemplate about it, because there's a lot to think about. And we could see that having that differentiation we studied about, where am I focusing about myself or about the other? If I'm focusing about the other, it's bad. If I'm focusing about myself, it's good. And also encouraging our self-esteem, building up our self-esteem through understanding that we all are special and unique in our different ways. And God should help us that we'll manage to get to where we can really see how we complete each other and how we complement each other and how we work together towards the same goal and the same mission. Bezat Hashem. Okay. Somebody had some questions. Let me see if they ask questions online. I don't know. Where is it? Sometimes they write. Okay, nobody asked questions. Good. Ruben, you have a question? I'll turn off the streaming first.